Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Christy Taylor, and I am back with another exciting episode of the Careercoachrx Podcast. We are officially kicking off Black History Month, and we're going to be talking about the Ministry of Success. And we have an empowerment coach, educator, awesome speaker, and facilitator with us today. And we're going to be talking about everything from education to mindset transformation with Mrs. Rhonda Simmons. She has over 15 plus years of experience in education and even longer experience in the ministry. Ms. Simmons, we're so excited to meet you. And whatever I didn't cover, please tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspires you to do the work that you do.
Well, I am so glad to be here, Dr. Taylor. Thank you for the invite. Sometimes it's challenging to talk about myself because I don't take time to really think about it. I just do and keep moving forward. But as you mentioned, I am an educator and certified state principal. And I'm excited because I've spent the last nearly 15 years in education as a teacher and school administrator. And that has really opened up my mind to different possibilities and to different problems that can be addressed. I'm also the founder and CEO of the Simmons Empowerment Foundation, Incorporated, and it's a nonprofit organization that supports unwed teen moms. And our mission is to have a home for them, not just a shelter, but a place where they can learn pre- and postnatal health education skills, job skills training, and coaching. And so we're on the move and definitely staying busy. And so the reason why I do what I do, first and foremost, is because God told me to. I know that sounds pretty simple, but truth isn't complicated. And so God told me to do this as far as the foundation is concerned. And actually, over 20 years ago, before I moved to Texas. And I wanted to know, what am I supposed to do when I get to Texas? I have no idea. And that was the answer to prayer that came back. And I did not see that coming at all. And God is just so faithful because here we are. A whole lot of life transpired between 2003 and 2020 when I started the nonprofit. But I know I'm in the right place at the right time.
This conversation can go so many ways. And when we had our initial discussion, I told you, I would go in whatever the direction that you flow in. Now, the lineup of people that I have coming on the podcast this month is very intentional, right? I have everyone from educators to people who work in real estate, because I want to talk about some of the hot topics in our community and some of the challenges. And but as a career coach, the one thing that I hear is I have to start the conversation out with that simple inspiration, because you're already giving tidbits of wisdom just in you sharing your story. When we talk about what inspires you, and you say what did you just say? Because that's going to be a quote I keep in my head. The truth is always simple. Or what did you just say?
Yeah, the truth isn't complicated.
Yes, the truth isn't complicated, because from a coaching perspective, right? I'll often have people to come to me, hey, Dr. Taylor, I'm just trying to find my way. What am I, trying to figure out their career? What do they want to do? And I'm always like, follow your heart. We do these career assessments. We do all of these things. We go down the list, the checklist, and we do all of these things. But what you just said is so powerful, right? Because from a mindset and transformation standpoint, when something keeps bubbling up, and so in your mind, when you have a vision, you said for over 20 years, you've had a vision for wanting to do something in this ministry, your way of supporting, then you don't need a personality test, you don't need a career test, you don't need an exam to do that, right? Because you know that it was a vision that was given into you and created. And so I just want to remind people that as you said, right, the truth is not complicated. So when it's something that you feel in your heart that you want to do, you need to go in that direction, and God will continue to open doors for you. And so this is not a religious podcast, but if people have listened to my podcast before, they don't have no problem with talking about God, right? Because that's my sense of inspiration. And so in the 15 years that you've been an educator, that you've worked as a teacher, a principal, let's take a moment to discuss some of the challenges that you have seen students experiences. I have taught in K through 12 myself. in underserved communities. And I know that some of the challenges those students experience. But what I want to take this conversation to is, what challenges did you see as an educator that inspired you to become a principal? And then how does that translate into the work you do wanting to start at home for young mothers?
Well, I get that question a lot, but my answer hopefully is not perceived as arrogant, but it was always my intention to become a principal. From day one of being a teacher, I went in the door knowing I was going to be a principal. That was the plan. And I mean, you know how people do that whole 5-year plan thing. I knew that by the end of my 3rd year of teaching, I would have my master's degree, and it happened. I knew that by the end of my 5th year of teaching, I'd be ready to move into administration, and that happened. And I went straight from teaching 8th grade ELA to being assistant principal at an elementary school. That was a big jump, and but not one that I regret. And it's been a wonderful learning experience because your mindset inevitably shifts. You think differently, you think from multiple perspectives. And one of the things that I have seen, even as a teacher and as a school administrator, is that educators of other cultures who are not in an underserved population a lot of times don't take the time to learn other populations. And by that I mean, I had one student when I was a teacher. I had one student who did fine in my class. I had no behavior problems at all whatsoever. He would go to the next class and literally rip the phones off the wall. He threatened the teacher, throwing chairs. And this happened on a consistent basis. And what bothered me is that no one from administration on down, no one came to ask me why this student wasn't acting up in my class. No one asked me that question. No one asked me, well, this kid is acting really crazy everywhere else. How come you aren't calling the front office like everybody else? And how come you're not writing up discipline referrals? I said, because I don't have those problems, and we have an understanding. And a lot of times, you know how a lot of states go by the Common Core curriculum.
Yeah.
And sometimes people take that same mentality to how we treat students, a Common Core treatment of students, and they think that equal is fair. And that's not the case in our culture.
Between equality and equity, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And, like I've been saying this for years and no one really takes me seriously, but I would love for educators to go off campus, since, people are afraid of litigation, to go off campus and just sit down and have a conversation about how to interact with various cultures. For example, with our African American boys, if you come across weak and shy and quiet, you're going to have a rough school year. They're just, you got to come across really like Big Mama and, and make those connections, do what you have to do to reach them. And it's not that they are incapable of learning. It's none of that. It's just people are different. And as educators, we need to take time to learn these differences and govern ourselves accordingly. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that I've seen. And that kind of translates into my ministry as well, because I believe that people, we serve everyone. I've talked to other colleagues who have said, they only, in their businesses, they only work with African Americans. And don't get me wrong, I am 100% proud to be an African American. I really am. However, I can't, in all good faith, look a teen mom or any child in the eye who doesn't look like me and say, sorry, I can't help you because you don't look like me.
Exactly. Part of the reason why I invited you on this show, what you saw me typing was my little notes and pulling up my statistics as you were talking, because I wanted to hit on a few things before we do a complete transition into your business, right? Because one part of why I wanted you on this show is because of the work that you're doing, supporting young people and this mindset, but is this whole mindset transformation and empowerment in the work that you're doing through your ministry. But you are so right. My business itself is making a transition to social impact. The work that you do, Rhonda, is social impact, right? I wanted to go back to something that you said and listening to you, which made me go and get the stats, right? What you were really talking about there is that diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we, in education, we do these workshops and it's all just touchy-feely, right? Everybody wants to hear the language. Everybody wants to hear the buzzwords and the terms, right? The buzz terms, whatever's hot. It all sounds great when you're sitting in a workshop. But the real work is us as educators making that personality transition, right? To know that, to really understand the student population that we are teaching. And not just to take a workshop to be using the buzz terms of I took a DEIA workshop, or there's so much of what you said. I wanted to give you a few stats and have you to highlight on that, because with the way that we are not being able to capture young people in the classroom, right? You're doing some work in the community. And it's not just the work that you're doing, even though this month is about focusing on empowering the Black community. Both of us are business owners, and we know, and we're both doing work from the heart. So it's like you say, right? The work that you're doing, yes, we want to empower, but we know that if we're doing the work of God, that whoever he sends our way, right? That there's a broader scope to this. Whoever he sends our way is who we're going to help and support, because he's going to also send you the means to help and support. So I 100% agree with you and 100% support you in that. I just want to hit a couple of things that ties into what you say. Here are just a few stats that I pulled up. For African-American students, African-American students are disproportionately, they're represented in disciplinary actions such as suspensions, expulsions that lead to high rate of school exclusion. They have lower access rates to advanced placement courses. Now, I'm just reading just some general statistics. Standardized test scores for African-American students are often show disparities in proficiency levels. I don't know if you've ever heard of the school to prison pipeline that started in the third grade. When we look at the third grade test scores, those students who score lower on those standardized tests, that's what they're using to quote unquote estimate crime rate and the number of prison beds. It's so important that we as educators speak up on this type of stuff. And it's so important for us to be able to link the work that you're doing. When we talk about the ministry of success, now you are empowering kids in not only the classroom, you're not only, and guys, excuse my voice today because I'm dealing with the cold, but you're not only doing this work in the classroom. When we talk about, you talked about implicit bias. Studies have found that implicit bias and cultural insensitivity contributes to disparities in disciplinary actions. So it's not just even the disciplinary actions itself, like you talk about when you have that relatability to the student populations that you serve, right? And you're going above and beyond to make sure that those students are properly supported, because you go out of your way to connect. When I taught school, it was a community of all Hispanic students. The school was 1% Black. I guarantee you, as the teacher, I was the 1% Black in that school, right? And that was the population that I went out of my way to understand what those students' needs were. And then a couple of last statistics I want to give you. Family involvement with support systems play a crucial role in the academic success of African-American students. And research indicates that mentoring programs and targeted interventions can positively impact our communities. So now I want to transition this when I talk about the power of what you're doing, because you have this broader understanding as an educator and as an administrator who's experienced this in the classroom. Now let's talk about this work that you're doing in the community to empower. Let's talk about this ministry of success and how you're taking what you're doing in the classroom and the things that you've learned from your years of experience in education, and how God has empowered you through ministry to connect and transform your community. So when I titled this podcast, The Ministry of Success, I want you to take that and run with it. And how do you take that title and tie that to the work that you're not only, we know what you're doing in education, but how are you tying that to what you're doing in the community and through your business and organization.
All right. So, from a business standpoint, um, one thing that I have learned is that if you're going to be successful, you really need to be in a business that you're passionate about. And I know that may be very common knowledge, but here's where I'm going with that. Because if you're starting from a standpoint of what you're passionate about, then you need to be able to speak the language of the industry you're trying to step into or you're trying to advance. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because with my program, the service arm of my nonprofit organization is one of my coaching programs, which is called Dear Future Me, the coaching program. And the reason why that's important is because the program, and this is not a pitch, it's to explain what I'm saying.
Pitch it though. Pitch it. This is what you're here
Okay.
for. We want
Okay.
people to connect with you. We want people to feel empowered to reach out to you, right? The whole purpose of this podcast is not just for me to promote me. It's for me to promote you guys and promote what's happening in our community. And if somebody is listening to this and they're inspired by what Rhonda is doing, what she's pitching, what she's offering, then her contact information is going to be in the description. Reach out to her so that she can help you.
Thank you. So my coaching program that goes along with my nonprofit, again, it's called Dear Future Me, the coaching program. And I help students ages 14 through 21 who are at risk for high school dropout improve their college and career readiness. And I say that because the wording of my program promise is essential to what I do and the people I'm interacting with, because as you and I both know, college and career readiness is tracked, at least in the state I live in, it is tracked from 5th grade all the way to 12th grade by that one state annual assessment. They track that student, every student, to determine how ready they are for college or career or even the military. And so they're basing all of their statistics and planning and funding on that test and the students' performance. And so the reason why my program is so significant to education is because within every district, the district is required by state law to have what's called a transition program for students in 8th grade and above, meaning that they have to engage students in some sort of activity, program, course, or something like that that will prepare them for life after high school. They start talking about career investigations or things like that, and it is a requirement. Now, does it rank as high on the list as the Common Core curriculum, and the state standards for, the core subjects? I would have to say no in the eyes of a principal. However, it is still a requirement, and it's an important check the box. They cannot overlook that. And so I've positioned my program to be really an irresistible offer because they have to have this. And principals don't want to spend a whole lot of time trying to think about it. They just know they need to have it. They need to be able to show proof every year that they provided this for students in 8th grade and above. And so I'm the person to help. And so my program is virtual, but it can take on different forms. If it's a local district, then I can come and do assemblies, or they can fly me out. That's fine. But I can do assemblies. Something has to be done in every school that has 8th grade to 12th grade. And so the program is so important because the students need to be prepared. When you're looking at underserved students, well, let me change that. When you're looking at students who are underserved, and I changed the wording because they're students first. When you're looking at them, a lot of times, all they see is all they know, and they think that that's all that they can become. And a lot of times they don't have that voice in their ear to tell them there's more to life. There's more available, and all they know is, their little four walls, their little family, their little neighborhood. I know people that have never, left my hometown. Just
Listen, I taught in Florida. I taught elementary school in here in DC, and I taught in Texas, but I taught in Florida. I didn't check to see where you was from, but there was a little town, Texas. There's a little town in Florida, Belle Glade, is right outside of Palm Beach. It's part of Palm Beach County. That's where I worked. My kids, there's a 32-mile road, right, that would take you into Palm Beach County from the Glades to Palm Beach. Mm-hmm. I had kids who had never even traveled that 32 miles to get out of the Palm Beach. The reason why they were in college is because the college was across the street from the high school.
Wow.
So you would be, and somebody had one of the teachers had said that to me. And we had kids that never have left the Glades. Mm-hmm. And one day I had a young lady, I had invited her up to where the area where I was living in Palm Beach to have lunch. Mm-hmm. And she made a comment, and I said, "You've never left the Glade?" She literally drove up there to have lunch with me at Chipotle of all places. So I just said, we can never, to your point, we can never, underestimate a young person's experience, right?
Right.
So the work that you're doing is awesome. Keep going. What other programs do you have? So one of the stats that was given here was, the importance of family involvement. So what I really also want to hear more too is about how are you empowering families and working in the community, and then in other work that you're doing with your ministry and through your organization when it comes to empowering you.
Well, a lot of times, because the families that I encounter are, I'm trying to think of a more positive word. The family units are not units. I'll put it that way. You have to start where they are. One of the things that I did last year was I hosted a community baby shower.
Oh, good.
For unwed teen moms. And it was amazing to me because what started out as just an idea that, God dropped in my mind to do turned out to be so much more, because, when you start to talking to people about what you're doing, then they want to get involved. And so I strategically held the baby shower at a school in our area that was originally established decades ago as a school specifically for unwed teen moms so that they could get their high school diplomas. Over the decades, it has evolved into, more diverse student population, but the school, it still has like a 90% or above at-risk rate. And so I was able to have the baby shower there, but I wanted it to be something more than just, let's get together and, play these cute little baby games and, eat a hot dog and go home. I wanted more than that, because I wanted these young ladies to see more than that. Yeah. And so it was amazing to watch them coming into the cafeteria of the school, with their parents, and that look on their face of absolute skepticism. I mean, no denying it. They weren't trying to hide. They didn't know what to expect. And a lot of them, the looks on their face said, "Are you going to judge me?"
That was a question I was going to ask you. As you're telling this and you're sharing this, it comes to mind like how much of so much of the work that you do as an educator, as a founder of this nonprofit, these kids are coming to you broken. And you are tasked with empowering them. And I was going to ask you that question. How much pushback do you get because of the level of hurt that these young people have experienced, or the lack of trust? How often do you see that when they come in? So you see the skepticism from these young ladies that you're throwing this for because they're scared of feeling judged. And how do you wrap your arms around them in a way to help them, to reassure these young people that you are here to help them, support them, not judge them? Because this is your ministry. This is what you're doing, right?
Yes. Well, like I did that night, and like I do more often now than I ever thought I would, is I tell them my story. You know, um, I use the gifts God gave me, and one of them is to be able to communicate in a way that is relatable to people, and that will help them change their minds about some things. And so I just tell them how I connect to the story, because most of the time, Dr. Taylor, whenever I tell people about the nonprofit, they immediately think, oh, she was a teen mom and that's why she started it. It's not true at all. As I said in the very beginning, I started it because God told me to, um, but I don't have any children. And so I was not a teen mom. Um, and that's not my connection to the work that I do. My connection is because many years ago, well over 20 years ago, I was super sick, Dr. Taylor, and I had to go to the hospital, and I was sick like all that year. And it was a situation where I had to decide when I was going to have surgery. It wasn't a matter of, having surgery or not having surgery. It was just a matter of, do I have it now, or do I wait until I'm in a life or death situation and then, flip a coin, and, it can go either way. But surgery was inevitable. And the significant thing about the surgery is that I knew that the surgery would leave me unable to have children. And at the time, I was, because I've been in ministry over 30 years, and at the time I was in ministry and at what I thought was the height of my ministry. And I was traveling all over the place, preaching everywhere. And I remember thinking, well, I don't want to end up in a foreign country preaching somewhere, and my body just decides, here we go. And then I have to have this emergency surgery, and I can't communicate with the medical team because of language barriers. And so, have you ever done what you thought was the right thing at the time to do? Yeah. And
Uh, yeah,
yeah,
but you
so
get, and I'm going to say something to you because this is going to show to me that this was God's path of God allowing us to cross paths. Go ahead and finish.
so so I did. I made the decision to have the surgery because that was the logical thing to do. That's a decision that made sense to me at the time, and so I went into the hospital. Now I'll never forget this as long as I live. If I forget everything else in my life as I get older, I will never forget that night, waking up after surgery, unable to move because I was heavily sedated, in extreme pain. But I still remember the very first thought that I had when I woke up. And that thought was, oh my God, what have I done? And I get choked up every time I tell this story, because this story is my biggest life regret, because I'm a preacher. I've been preaching a long time, Dr. Taylor, and I preach faith. I believe God, and God can do it. He can work miracles. Woohoo! I preach it. I preach it. I preach it, and believe in God and trust in God. But in my moment of crisis, I responded with logic, not necessarily with faith, and I didn't give God a chance. I didn't. I didn't give God a chance. And the thing about it is, Dr. Taylor, is that I was a grown woman then, like I am now. Um, and there was no one in my circle of friends that asked me this one question. And that question is, are you prepared to live with the decision that you've made? No one asked me that question. I didn't ask myself that question. But had that question been posed to me, it I believe it would have made me stop and think. And so when I encountered these teen moms, it's a little late when they're pregnant to talk about, what you shouldn't have done and you shouldn't be pregnant. We're not having that conversation. We're past that. Neither am I going to judge you because you're about to live with the decision that you've made 18 to 20 years, so I don't have to say anything. But the only thing I want to ask these young ladies, I want to be the voice that I did not have in my moment of crisis. Whatever their decision is, are you prepared to live with the decision that you've made? Because you're going to, whatever decision it is. And, no one prepared me for the psychological impact of the decision that I made. I wasn't married at the time, and it affected my life for years after that, because I felt inferior. I'm a woman. I was created to have children. Now I can't. And there's nothing I can do about it. And that's when I really realized, Dr. Taylor, that there are some things in life that cannot be undone. There really are. And so that is my connection, living with that regret. That's my connection to these young ladies, because you and I both know there's 1,000,001 reasons why they could be pregnant. It's not as simple as, they're just sleeping around. They could be carrying their father's baby.
They could be. And even some, even with some young people, the young ladies who are not feeling loved at home get caught up in that cycle of, I just want somebody to love me. Mm-hmm. I'll say this. My business is in the process of the transition. I started back in 2016 when I was only working with healthcare professionals. And I kept asking myself, when I relaunched as WORxK Solutions, I kept asking myself, as I built out the Careercoachrx brand of the business, am I really serving my target population? The information that I put out there from a career coaching standpoint, it applies to everybody. It is to support anybody. We got almost 4,000 people on TikTok following us, answering interview questions. There are resources there that applies to anybody. But I was like, do I need to go back to my roots of social impact, where, that realm where healthcare falls under? And I've had my own challenges with fertility. I don't have any children either. And in December, I was watching a story about a young lady. I put up Brittany Watts, a young lady who was told that her child was going to be stillborn in Ohio. And she tried to have an abortion because the baby was already, she basically tried to have the baby explode because it was already miscarried, right? Had already miscarried. She was just carrying around the corpse of the baby. And because of the laws there, she could not even have the baby explode from her body. She had to carry a dead baby to term. When the baby was born, the baby was born in the toilet. It was just a corpse born in the toilet. Of course, since she had to carry it to term, the baby's born in the toilet. They arrest her for tampering with a corpse for a stillborn baby that they knew that was already pregnant. And I said, man, I'm pretty much, I don't do my political views online, but I am pretty much pro-life, but I'm pro-choice if that's what you want, right? But in this case, it wasn't even an issue of pro-life or pro-choice. It was like she was literally forced to carry around a corpse. And then the trauma associated with having to carry that to full term and then to be arrested. And I said, what am I doing? Right? What am I doing as a leader? I have a degree in global health. I've done the work in health education for years. What am I doing when I'm not using the platform that God has allowed me to build to do work for my community? And that is why we have this podcast blitz for Black History Month, where I am doing all of this work to make sure that I showcase and highlight some of the issues in our community. But that very thing that happened in December is why on February 24th, from 10 o'clock to 12:30 p.m., I am hosting the Black Health Summit. It was that story and dealing with the challenges of her fertility and understanding my own journey with fertility, right? And then to have you come on this show tonight is just a confirmation for me, because people will automatically assume, and this could be a whole nother podcast of when people see successful Black women, what they automatically assume when we don't have any children, and they don't always ascertain it to, you might be having some challenges with fertility. So in that, I am going to have people come on and talk about mental health and some of the challenges, things that we don't talk about in our community. But I went out of my way to find somebody to come on and talk about Black maternity health. a young lady who has done her research on Black women, infertility, and post-traumatic stress disorder, because I get it, right? And so when we talk about being coaches and mindset transformation coaches, this episode tonight has been powerful and inspiring to me as a coach. You sharing your own story, because it's just a confirmation of what I had in my mind in December when I said, here I am building this platform I'm a career coach, but I'm also a health educator. When we talk about holistic living, what can I do to help Black women more? When we talk about the challenges of fertility and the things that are happening in our own community. So I want to say thank you, Rhonda, for just taking time to share your personal story, your personal journey, because it is definitely a confirmation for me. And the work that you do inspiring young women and supporting these young women who have had challenges. And so I want to bring this full circle before we wrap up today. Rhonda is an educator, right? And today's episode is about the ministry of success. And if you're listening in, it probably isn't what you thought it was going to be, right? This is about defining success in your own right. She's already successful. She's a principal. She's a member of her community. She's been in the ministry for years, but yet she still finds the time to do the work based on a vision that God has given her. That because something happened in her own life, she's doing this work that inspired by a vision God has given her, and she's carrying out a whole separate mission based on passion alone, right, and inspiration alone. And when we talk about success, most people attribute it to I got to be a millionaire. But what we have to learn to do as entrepreneurs, business owners, people who are working in our communities, is understanding that when we have a vision that's been given to us, achieving that vision is a definition of success. Learning to define success within your own parameters, within your own God-given right. And so we thank you for that inspiration today, Rhonda. And as we wrap up today's episode and we revisit all of the things that we taught and we learned from hearing your story, and your story again serves as a confirmation for our February 24th event, please share with the audience where they can find you, how they can contact with you, how they can connect with you. We're going to have your information in the description box, but please share final tidbits of wisdom in terms of how we can connect with you. And, what do you want us to take away from our discussion today?
Well, my website, first of all, the Simmons Empowerment Foundation Incorporated. I know that's a long name, but the website is shorter than that. It's www.tsefi.org, and that's just the acronym for the Simmons Empowerment Foundation Incorporated. You can also reach me at info@tsefi.org. And, I was just thinking, takeaways. And, I guess in a lot of ways, I'm old school, and I'm okay with that, And there's this old hymn that, because a lot of people don't sing hymns anymore. And no, I'm not about to start singing on your podcast. I've done that on my podcast, but I won't do that on yours. But there's this old hymn that says, if I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or a song, if I can show somebody that they're traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. And that verse just drives me, because I want to help people. And I've come to realize through my own struggles, my own hurts and trials and traumas and catastrophes, that people are more than meets the eye. And so many times we think that just because people are smiling and they're saying all the right words, that they're okay. But I know how to do that. And I remember a time in my life where in the midst of me doing that, I was having suicidal thoughts and nobody knew it. And so been there, done that. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to be depressed. I know what it's like. And there's help. I do want to say this, especially in our community, do not be afraid to get help. Talk to whoever you need to talk to. There are so many resources. The industry is flooded with coaches. Get some help. You are not alone. And so that is so important. And it's important to me, as much as I love church, don't get me wrong, I love God, I love church. My ministry actually started literally preaching on the streets of Philadelphia, literally right at the top of the steps going down to the subway, right on bus stops, right on the trains. Yes, in the Badlands, and you can look it up and find out about the Badlands. I know what that's like, and that's my heart. And you've got to have a heart for people. People look at ministry and they want to have these big names and drive cars. They have this awful misconception of what ministry is. But ministry is service. It's service. That's all it is. It's service.
So
Not
I encourage everybody to work in your ministry. If God is giving you a vision, God is giving you a passion, to work in that passion. I want to say thank you guys for joining us today. You can find Rhonda. We'll post her information in our website out in the description box. And you can find us across all social media at Careercoachrx. And you can log on to careercoachrx.com if you need assistance with your career or support with mindset transformation. Thank you for joining us today. Until